Hello everyone, and welcome to Yoshi Kenobi's Krenko Street Kingpin Mutate deck on MTG Arena Standard. The goal of this deck is to play a Krenko Street Kingpin on turn 2 ideally, and then mutate it on top of it on turn 3, and then attack with a 3 or 4 or even 5 powered Krenko on turn 3, summoning a horde of goblins and putting the game out of reach for opponent. So what Krenko does, it's a 3-mana 1/2 legendary goblin. Whenever it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then you create a number of 1/1 red goblins equal to Krenko's power. So just plain Krenko is going to start as a 1/2. You attack, it becomes a 2/3 that summons 2 tokens. It's fairly good, but prone to removal, and relatively slow compared to Legion War Boss. But if we get to play it on turn 2, and then we use an Everquill Phoenix, then that becomes a 4/4 flyer. Whenever it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you summon at least 5 goblin tokens. It's just ridiculous value if we get to pull it off. Another thing that we want to mutate on is the Dreadhorder Butcher. It's a 1/1. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever it dies, you deal damage equal to its power to any target. Again, imagine you have a Dreadhorder Butcher, and you may mutate an Everquill Phoenix on top of it. Then suddenly you have a 4/4 flyer that's going to gain +1/+1 counters whenever it deals damage to the opponent. Whenever we kill the Phoenix, then we deal damage to target opponent equal to the full power of the Phoenix, which would now be 5 if we've dealt damage to our opponent once. So it's just a lot of value. We'd also get the Feather token to revive our Destoria Perfect Life Form or Everquill Phoenix. So the deck is very simple. We play Arboreal Grazers and Gilded Goose in order to ramp into a Dreadhorder Butcher or Krenko on turn 2. Then we want to play Everquill Phoenix, Gemrazer, or Migratory Greathorn to mutate on these 2 creatures and transform these creatures, which are good at face value, into mutated monsters that will just dominate the battlefield unless they're dealt with immediately. We also play Stonecoil Serpent for the same reason. So we have 2 ramping creatures, 3 creatures that we want to mutate on, 3 creatures that we want to mutate on something, and 4 Primal Might, because Primal Might goes very well with our strategy, and it acts as a removal spell. Primal Might on Stonecoil Serpent that's mutated, you now have a humongous Trampler ready to attack. Primal Might on Krenko Tin Street Goblin? Well, you thought a mutated Tin Street Kingpin would summon a lot of goblins? Try a mutated goblin that has Primal Might on top of it for something like X = 5. You'll summon so many goblins that your opponent will scoop immediately, or play some kind of board wipe. One of the 2. Primal Might on Dreadhorder Butcher. It becomes a huge threat, and if the opponent kills it, you deal huge amount of damage whenever it dies. So that's the idea behind the deck. Super fun to play, as long as your opponent doesn't remove your Krenko and Dreadhorder Butcher quickly, and you have the time to mutate on top of them. Obviously that's the one weakness of the deck, but who plays Shock anyways? Actually, in the current metagame, there's a lot of decks like Mono Green that isn't going to try and destroy your creatures with these types of effects, so you'll have the time to actually get a Krenko, mutate it, and just enjoy all the fun. So now let's see this deck in action, and let's see what it can do. We are playing Krenko Mutate on MTG Arena Standard against Sebatop 8. Sebatop is probably a type of elder dinosaur. We have a whole bunch of ramp creatures and nothing else. We believe in the draws. I think we'll mulligan. That's pretty good. Let's keep this. Don't really need the Grazer. We can easily go Blood Crypt into Butcher into Greathorn. And save the Stonecoil Serpent for when we have a bit of more leftover mana. I'm afraid of a shock. Oh no. Opponent does have the shock. That's too bad. I had great hopes for that Butcher. But the Butcher will settle for a Burning Shock and Burning for 1. But now plays the Steamkin. We are officially against red deck wins. That's okay, because we have a Street Kingpin. And we will pass the turn. Come on, opponent. No removal. Opponent claims the Krenko. We'll tick up the Krenko for us. Summon a bunch of goblins. Feels a little odd claiming the Firstborn in this deck. Rimrock Knight. I should have played the Rimrock Knight before attacking. That's all good. We thank you for ticking up our Krenko for us. Let's mutate Krenko, which is the goal of the deck. And now we have a 4/5 Krenko. Which costs 4 converted mana. Make it a 5/6. And we'll pass the turn to our opponent. It's gonna be hard for red deck wins to deal with a 4 mana 5/6. That keeps on growing. Oh, let's do the proper blocks. I don't really care about the tokens, we'll just have a whole bunch more next turn. So we'll trade for the tokens, we'll kill the Fervent Champion, and we'll chump block the Runaway Steamkin. Opponent Embercleaves. This is truly beautiful. Primal Might, X equals 4. Our Migratory Greathorn, that's also a Streamkin, is now going to attack for 10, making 10 goblins. Now, isn't that some yummy mutation or not? Because I think it is. We got to mutate and Primal Might on our on our Street Kingpin and completely demolished our red deck wins opponent. We are playing Krenko Mutate on MTG Arena Standard against Alari. We have a pretty good hand. We will have a turn 2 Kingpin that we can mutate on turn 3. So what we want to do, now let's just hope that our opponent is a punching bag that doesn't play any kind of removal on our Street Kingpin. Opponent's playing green, so probably no pieces of removal for our turn 2 Kingpin. Uh-oh. Red indicates burn potential. Robber of the Rich. Alright, the opponent's playing Gruul aggro, which I'm completely fine with, because it means that our game plan is untouched. We have 2 red, black, we want green. Alright. We'll attack with our goblin producer and make 4 goblins. And our opponent resigns. That is just good enough. The turn 2 Kingpin into the Migratory Greathorn mutation is just too strong, unless our opponent has removal. See details inside the box. We are playing Krenko Mutate on MTG Arena Standard against Artmut Knop. We will keep this. We have a turn 2 Krenko or Dreadhorder Butcher with a bunch of mutators. Mana Ram, 2 colors of mana. Could we ask for more? Of course we could. I mean, I am quite greedy. Opponent mulligan to 6. Opponent is pondering what their opening land will be. And it shall be a swamp. A swamp with a dead dinosaur on it. Our move will be to play a Gilded Goose. Get some food. So it's the Ragdos Sacrifice build, most likely. Which means that if we get a Street Kingpin on the battlefield, yeah, we'll block. If we get a Street Kingpin on the battlefield and get 1 attack with it, we're probably in good shape, because our opponent won't be able to force us to sack all our tokens. So we will play this. Player Kingpin. And pass the turn back. Unless our opponent's playing this figure, Krenko shall live for the next turn. Looks like your opponent's holding village rights. That'd be my guess. Opponent's reading Krenko, Tin Street Kingpin. Opponent was holding village rights. Draws 2. What can our opponent have? Typically that deck plays Claim the Firstborn as removal. But once we mutate into a Gemrazer, Krenko won't be a target anymore. Call the Dead Dweller. Bringing a 5/5 flyer. Well, guess what? Your 5/5 flyer is not big enough for Krenko. Just going to be... Oh, actually it is big enough. Just big enough. For a 5/5, trample. Forcing our opponent to trade. But we get 5 goblin tokens in the exchange. Goblin cut purses. Opponent casts a Woe Strider and a Serrated Scorpion. You will play our Dreadhorder Butcher this turn. And I'll make a food. Making a food is still a decent move. And we have mutate target for days now with our 5 goblins. Opponent will sacrifice the goat, make some meat, draw some cards, well, scry some cards. That will resolve. There are very few ways to stop a Woe Strider trigger. Like 2 or 3? You can end the turn. So I guess we could cast Discontinuity in response to the Woe Strider Sacrifice a Goat ability. Which would be terrible. Opponent scry to the bottom. Opponent has 2 cards in hand. Take a look at our Dreadhorder Butcher. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we can put a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever it dies, we deal damage equal to its total power. So once it's mutated, its total power is the total power of the mutated creature. And now we have some fun. Fly, Dreadhorder Butcher! Fly! This is like the scheme of a Car Rangers movie where you have the Dreadhorder Butcher that just suddenly mutates into this giant flying beast, which will hit you for 4 and become a 5/5. Can't block this. Da, 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 da. And whenever it does, it's going to deal 5 damage to anything. That's right, 5, until it grows bigger and stronger. And that's the place where I'd insert a song. It's probably better not to. Opponent has 3 cards in hand. We have the perfect zombie life form. Mutation, Dreadhorder Butcher. The opponent is pondering, which way do you want to play in order to lose this game? And my recommendation for our opponent is to not play anything. That is the fastest way to lose the game. Well, second fastest way. The fastest way is to hit the resign button on the top of your screen. Opponent has an Archfiend's Vessel. We'll sack the Archfiend's Vessel. We'll revive the Archfiend's Vessel. And the Serrated Scorpion. Alright, you get your 5/5 flyer. And we get Primal Might. How do you want to play this? You can just do a huge Primal Might on the Everquill. Kill the 5/5 and swing for a lot. Yeah, like that. Primal Might is just so good. Village Rites? Opponent has the Woe Strider trigger. It's alright, we still needed to target the flyer. And we will swing for 8 in the air. And tick up, and pass the turn. Opponent has a Mayhem Devil. So our Goblin tokens' days are numbered. Well, that's alright, because the one we care about is our Destoroya, perfect zombie life form. Alright, so that thing has Death Touch Menace. It's annoying. Opponent has one relevant sack, the Mayhem Devil, to ping a token. Opponent will sack it. That is a good block. Opponent could have just sacked it and dealt damage. Now if we Krenko. No, let's just continue with our master plan. Hit you for 6. I'll just summon the 4/4 trample. Go a little wider. Don't really want a Krenko because I think the Krenko would die. To the Mayhem Devil. Ooh, our opponent is desperate now. Who wouldn't be in the face of an armored killer and a perfect life form? 2 cards in hand and a lone Woe Strider. Thankfully your opponent doesn't have anything else to sacrifice. I repeat. So the opponent has a Machine Gun Mayhem Devil, which can be used to kill anything. So it will kill our perfect life form. But that's okay, because you're down to 1. Thank you, Dreadhorder Butcher ability. Opponent gets a Scry, but it's too little, too late. Also get a Reviver Phoenix. Come back to life. Oops. That was really bad. That was really, really bad. Thankfully we were just that far ahead. Actually, Greathorn mutation's good enough. We just have too many mutations. And we have 2 flyers that can attack. And we'll send in a goblin for good measure. And that'll be good enough to defeat our opponent. Thanks to our Everquill Phoenix on the Dreadhorder Butcher. And that's how it's done, with crazy mutations on MTG Arena Standard. We are playing Krenko Mutate on MTG Arena Standard against an opponent whose avatar is Vraska. And we have a Grazer into Fabled Passage, which is quite awkward. We have the Great Horns, we have to keep this. Just really awkward. Because when we play the Fabled Passage from our hand tapped, we can't crack it. Oh well. It's cost of playing Fabled Passages. This is suboptimal. We'll set up our mutations. And we'll fetch a Black Source. And pass the turn back. All we really need to get started is another untapped land. In the meantime, we will punish our opponent for not playing anything on turn 1 by attacking with our Arboreal Grazer. Opponent's playing Elementals. Then we are playing catch up. Let's play our Stonecoil Serpent. Pass the turn back. Opponent plays Risen Reef. Alright, well we have a land. We are not dead yet. We will mutate the Migratory Greathorn on top of our Stonecoil Serpent, so that we have some trampling power. We'll fetch red, so we get access to our Street Kingpin. And we will hit ya. Second copy of Risen Reef. We are almost certainly dead at this point, because we do not have removal for the pair of Risen Reefs. And if you think Planeswalkers are bad, are good at card advantage, you haven't met Risen Reef. I'm pretty sure everyone has met Risen Reefs at this point in time. Well, Swing for 5. Let's do our own stuff. Krenko. Should have gone with plan A, which was just mutating Grazer. Oh, it has protection from multicolor, my friend. It's still a Stonecoil Serpent at heart. Which means that our opponent cannot block the Migratory Greathorn. I'll block one of these. Let's play Street Kingpin again. Attack you for 5. You can't block because it has protection from multicolored. Now one more hit from the Greathorn Serpent and your opponent will lose. But your opponent has a lot of mana and a lot of Risen Reefs and a ton of cards in hand. Durian. Alright. Well, that'll kill the Street Kingpin. Alright. So the only thing in our way is the Leafkin Druid. If we draw a removal spell, we will win the game. If we don't, I think we are going to fall under the ridiculous card advantage that our opponent has in place. So we need to draw Primal Might, basically. And our opponent has finally finished drawing cards. It's Primal Might or bust time. That is not a Primal Might. Well, we can increase the power on the Greathorn by 1 if we cast our Gemrazer, which means we would be hitting for 2. Our opponent would be hard pressed. Our opponent will be forced to play 2 Bone Crusher Giants, survive, which means we get 1 more draw. Or if we just attack, our opponent goes down to 2. Opponent still has to play 2 Bone Crusher Giants. Yeah, I think Dreadhorder Butcher is also a draw that makes us win. So we'll just attack with the 5/6. Opponent has to block with the Leafkin Druid. Opponent takes 1, down to 2. 4, 7, 8, 9. We should live 1 more turn. And I think Dreadhorder Butcher is good enough to win. Because if we Dreadhorder Butcher and put... Ooh, Terror of the Peaks. Alright, that's a thing. Bone Crusher Giant. Opponent wants to make sure that they don't die. Rightfully so. And we draw it! We drew the Primal Might. Which is going to be just enough. Whew. Thank you, top deck. Greathorn will fight Terror of the Peaks. And then we will trample all over your Bone Crusher Giant. Protection from multicolor and very lucky top decks bring us to victory with Krenko Mutate, which was really more Stonecoil Serpent Mutate. We are playing Krenko Mutate on MTG Arena Standard against Clay Shroom. Now, a mushroom makes you grow bigger, a tiny shroom makes you go smaller. Does a Clay Shroom transform you into clay? I think this is keepable. It's not really what we want. Feels like the hand that's a turn 1 Goose into a turn 2 nothing. I'll play the Goose untap. Well, we'll play the Overgrown Tomb untap in case we draw land. In which case we can Migratory Greathorn on top of it. Archfiend's Vessel. Alright. Well, let's go fetch a red source. Play a second Goose. Has the turn. Opponent casts the Priest of I kill all your stuff. We will block the Archfiend. Dreadhorder Butcher. We'll play the Butcher. And then we will pass the turn. We need 1 or 2 more lands. Although we have a Greathorn next turn. That is yucky. Opponent takes control of our Butcher. Opponent plays their own Butcher. Opponent attacks with the Butchers. I'll block both Butchers, because otherwise they become 2/2s. And now our opponent's going to sack both Butchers and wipe out our Goose. Geese. Opponent will wipe out our Geese. Yeah. Second Archfiend's Vessel. So opponent is ready to make us sacrifice anything. How do we get out of there? I can Stonecoil Serpent for 2. And Primal Might, the Priest of Forgotten Gods. It's not a good move, but keeps us from being mostly dead on the spot. Mayhem Devil. Alright, well. Great on the Stonecoil Serpent. I could kill off the Mayhem Devil. Not right now. We'll pass the turn. Second copy of Mayhem Devil. Fabled Passage. Alright. Let's kill off one of them. Primal Might for 4. Otherwise it's just too much mayhem. Opponent pings us twice. We've dealt it 1. No, I feel like we have to attack, because it's 9 points of damage with trampling. Opponent double blocks with the Archfiend's Vessel, telegraphing that our opponent is holding Call of the Dead Dwellers. Or not. Maybe just another Archfiend's Vessel. Opponent hits us for 3. back to us. He'll hit you for 5. Well, 4. You block that way. You gain 1, down to 12. We have a mutating target. And we'll pass the turn. Opponent plays the Dreadhorder Butcher. Opponent will attack with boat. Or just the Mayhem Devil. We'll gain 2 life. No blocks. You got it. We'll gain 2 life. And ready. Forest, not what we're looking for, but we'll try to race. Hit you for 5. Pass the turn back. Opponent drew something. Looks like a Call of the Dead Dwellers. Which is horrible for us. Absolutely horrible. Opponent could bring an Archfiend's Vessel and a Priest of Forgotten Gods. Ugh. You were very slightly ahead on board. And now we have almost no outs. I think our only real out is another copy of Primal Might. The opponent's going to kill us. In the air we get a block. We have protection from multicolor with the Greathorn. But if the priest activates, sacks these 2, can ping us for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we're dead. Just a matter of whether opponent sees it or not. We got close. But yeah, that is game. And we resign. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe by clicking the Yoshi icon at the right of your screen. It doesn't cost you any mana, and it greatly helps to support this channel and keep the awesome videos coming.